Hello, everyone. Madilynn Dale here, and I have another amazing author for you guys to listen to and check out. I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her books that she's got out.
Okay. All right. Well, my name is Elizabeth Lavender, and I am originally from the Alabama coast, but I live in Texas now. And so I am married for probably about over 20 years now. I have two boys, a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old. And so this is my first gig as an author. I actually have a master's in counseling, and I work full time as a counselor. And so when I come home, this is my other thing. I sink into the author role. I have 3 books out right now in my Sunspear series, which is a sci-fi fantasy series. I'm currently working on the 4th one in the series. As far as how many books it's going to be, I really don't know. That's going to be a surprise to me too. So, like I said, 3 books out. The story, a mix of several different things. It's got a little bit of fantasy. It's got kind of a Star Wars feel as far as the sci-fi. It's kind of got another realm that it kind of visits just because I think some of the counseling part of me. So it's got kind of this dark psychological background that they're, because I like to play with their minds, kind of part of the title, Spinning of Deception. So it kind of intermingles in several different places. But our story starts out, we have 2 Sunspear bearers, as they're called, and it goes, the name comes from the weapon of choice that they use. It's a Sunspear that is half spear, half sword. And we have Dante, which is one of our Sunspear bears, and we have another one that is called just the girl. And she doesn't have a name until the 3rd book, but that's not her real name. And she remains mysterious throughout the entire series. So they are both fighting the same war, have to fight it in different ways because of a lot of things with the girls. And as we get into the book, you'll find out more about that. We find out very early that Dante is fighting on against what's called the Dark Lord, but his father is fighting with the Dark Lord. And so we find out why that's done. We find out the girl is also fighting, like I said, but because of a very dysfunctional family situation, she's having to do that a different way. And her dad is kind of fighting on, he's playing both sides of it. And so it puts her in a very dangerous situation. We have an event that has happened in the past, and there's a truth that gets revealed about what actually happened with that. And our girl has visions. She has a gift of visions, and she finds out the truth of that event, and it involves Dante's family. And once she finds out the truth about that, it puts a whole set of events in play. And once that happens, that is what gets us rolling in the 1st book. And from then on, the series kind of takes off. So
Nice.
there's a lot happening.
Yeah, it sounds like it, but that's always good because you want to keep the reader interested and you want to keep it like something always happening to keep them moving with the story. Yes. That's awesome. So when you started writing this series with book 1, did you see it going into multiple books, or did you have it planned originally as one book?
No, I definitely had it planned going into multiple books. I actually have the whole battle, that large, huge battle that's going to happen at the end. I have that already planned out in my head. I know how that's going to work. I know I've probably got some of the dialogue already written in my head. So there's events that are going to happen that have already happened in the 1st book, that things that are going to happen in the last book that are going to go back to things that have happened in the 1st book that are going to be explained, that may not make sense now, but they're going to be clarified because of things that will be revealed in the last book. So that's the other thing. I've had to be very careful while I'm writing the series to make sure that I leave kind of clues that when you come back, you're going to be like, oh, it makes sense now, but not enough that it actually tells. So.
Nice, like the Easter egg kind of stuff. I love
Yes.
that. It's always fun to have those. And when you realize, put two and two together, and later on, you're like, oh my gosh, that's what that meant. And even like going back through and reading it, it's like almost like I'm going to use Marvel movies as an example, because like I'm a huge Marvel fan. Watching the movie for the first time, you don't catch the little things, but when you say you've made it all the way to like Infinity War and you go back and start watching stuff, and you're like, holy cow, that ties in there, and like even further on. It's insane. I love Easter eggs.
We get that. We're huge Marvel fans in my house. My 15-year-old is all into Marvel. So
it's hard not to be. It's so good. It's so good. But I won't go off on a tangent with that.
No, I get it. He would totally love that. He would be all over.
Oh gosh. So with Dante, he sounds like an interesting character. Where did you find the inspiration to create him?
I have several. I can see him in several places. So I don't just get like, I haven't gotten my inspiration just like a lot of writers. There's so many stories out there and so many influences. So the sci-fi part, he's definitely has a lot of traits with like the Star Wars universe. But there's a lot of fantasy just with some of the Lord of the Rings characters. Also, one of my favorite series of all times is actually the Lloyd Alexander series. It's like a lot less known, but I remember that was one of my series that I loved, and I loved Taryn and the princess and that, the back and forth and stuff. And so that was he was one of those characters that he was this assistant pig keeper. I don't know if you've read that series, but I loved it. And just this lowly pig keeper, and then at the end, he learns what his hero really means, and he had to go through so many challenges and stuff. And so, like my inspiration for my characters just came from a variety of places. But once I found once I had my two main characters, Dante and the girl, that the other characters just kind of fell into place because they kind of found their way. So, but yeah, Dante came from a lot of, because there's a lot of heroes there, but just the way he just continues on, even though he's fighting on the other side, and he's just been through a lot. When you start going through it, he's lost a lot of people, but he's just determined not to lose anybody else. So
yeah, no, that makes sense. It's really good. So the world building that you've done for this series, did you pull that more from Star Wars, or was it multiple?
I pulled it from multiple places. That's one thing with when you're reading my stuff. I spend a lot of time with the story. I spend a lot of time with like the emotions that the characters are going through, what goes through their mind, what they're feeling. And I think, like I said, that has a lot to do with the counselor in me, because I'm more interested in what they're thinking and feeling and stuff like that. I don't spend a lot of time on description. I just have never been one of those people that describes the field and the ship and the whatever's around them. When I do, it's usually for the sake of function. Like they were on the ship and they went down the corridor to get to the next place, or it's one of those things I kind of assume it's a ship, and you know what that looks like. I'll leave it up to your imagination. Or there's places that I've described like what they were wearing, but it's more I've described that they were fully disguised, because one of the things the girl later in the series, she goes undercover a lot to go sneaking into Black Dragon in order to get intel, or she has a shipping dealer cover. So There's times that I describe the clothing not because describing like what she looks like, but more because I want you to be aware that she was disguised all the way so they can tell what she looked like, but not because I cared about you knowing, like I said, like what the color of the clothing was. It was because I wanted you to understand that they couldn't see her, or she was had a voice changer so that they couldn't tell that she sounded female. So I'm actually not big into the world building as far as description. So that can be an advantage or a disadvantage when you're reading my stuff. Because I've had some people that are like, I need every detail because I need to be able to see it. But I'm like the opposite when I'm reading stuff as a reader. So I'll have to admit that when it starts getting, the descriptions start getting kind of long, or even for me, long is pretty relative. So if it starts getting, then I'll start skimming because I really want to know what's going to happen next, like what they're thinking. And so I'm kind of like, okay, enough. We're in the field. Okay, I'm good. Like, I don't need. So, like I said, if you're one of those people that really needs like every detail painted out, then you may be disappointed when you're reading my stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way about the description. Like I put some in there, but it's not like overkill like a lot of authors do. Because I'm like you, I will skim over it. I'm just like, I don't need to know like what color the leaves on this tree is as they're walking by.
Yeah.
Like just say, hey, they walk by a tree, like you're good. So
right.
I mean, it can a lot of times there's very few stories I've come across that it helps having a ton of description. More often than not, I found that it kind of takes it away or it just gets skipped over.
So world building is kind of relative for me. Like I'll do it as much to say, kind of the weapons that they did, but I don't really like, mine's more the emotions and the story, like what they're gonna do. And it's a function. It's not
So you said there's gonna be a fourth book, right?
Yes, there is definitely. I'm in the middle of it. I think I'm like 60, 65, 68,000.
That's still quite a bit. So
1,000 words. Well, and like I say the words, but for me, like I usually have a distinct kind of endpoint of where I want to be in the storyline rather than the word count. And so like where I'm thinking I want to be in the storyline, I'm quite a ways still from there. So
that's an easier way to go, I say, instead of trying to be like, oh, I have to hit this many words and the story's done. Like, because you don't ever really know when it's going to end. I mean, but I'm also, are you a pantser or a planner?
I'm more the pantser.
Yeah, as a pantser, it's easier to do that than like say we're done at this word count. So
yeah, I'm definitely. I do like. I say I'm a pantser, but I'm definitely like I don't like plot per se, like a total outline, but I do have in my mind, okay, I need to get here, like as far as I need to get to this point in the story, and I know that there is points that need to happen, like there's events, there's dialogue, like there's specific things that they need to know in order to get them here. So there's events that have happen and things. So it's not like a formal outline, and it's a very loose thing. And I mean, there are times that my characters will do something, and like, because I do listen to my characters, and people are like, they don't talk. It's like, no, your characters absolutely do talk to you. You have whole conversations in your head with them. And characters will, and they'll tell you if you're steering them wrong. And if there's, because I had a whole scene that I had done, and beautiful scene, and I still have it, but I took it out and moved it, and it's going to be in a future book. But I was like, once I read it, I was like, this is too early. I was like, this needs to be in like book 5 or 6. This needs to be later, because I'm like, this is a great scene, but it's just too soon. It feels too soon. So So that took my word count down, but I was okay with that because it's not about the word count, but it was just like this is too early. So but yeah, so do I do my characters surprise me, and there's times that something will just pop in my head. Oh, that would make it a great scene, so let's do that. So it's pretty cool when that happens. So
Yeah. So with the characters pretty much dictating it and you working as a counselor on a regular basis, what is your writing schedule like?
it's kind of brutal, I guess some people would say, but um, it's amazing how little sleep you can get on and you can still be good to go. Um, I I've always been a night owl, as long as I can remember. So normally, I work 8 to 5, get home. One of my kiddos is in soccer, so we do soccer
Yeah.
practice like Tuesdays and Thursdays. Sometimes he has a game, Saturday on the weekend. So we run pretty crazy. So excuse me. So it's not unusual for us to be coming in and still have dinner and stuff. So normally I don't have a chance to do writing or any of my book stuff until 8:39, somewhere in there. So usually on the weekdays I don't go to bed until at least midnight.
Mhm.
Then we get up at 6 something, get kids to school, start trying to get work by 8. So I I would little sleep, but I'm
Yeah.
usually good. Weekends are a whole nother are awesome because then I can stay up as long as I need to. So usually on weekends I'm easily up till 4 and I'm
Ooh.
good.
Yeah.
And then I can sleep in. We have church on Sundays, but getting up at 8:30 is awesome because I've been getting up at 6 something the rest of, so
Yeah.
that's
It's
sleep
like
in.
still sleeping in. So gotta love that. Get the extra sleep that way. So
Exactly. So I keep some insane hours. So during on the weekends I can work usually most of the day except for if we have something that we need to go out and do. But yeah, so that's pretty much my schedule. Like I said, most people would call it brutal. Like this weekend I'm working on a newsletter too. So and then
yeah.
I usually try to read at least 2 books um, a month because I have a section in my newsletter that I do that I recommend 2 books. So I keep it.
That's
Keep it pretty
good. So, especially with your schedule like it is, 2 books is hard to get in sometimes. So,
It is, but I manage it. So
that's good. It's kind of like an escape and like almost like a de-stressor sometimes too when reading.
yeah, well, it gets me in trouble a couple of times because like once you get into a book, I mean, I've always said that, writers are readers first too.
Mhm.
And so I'll get into a book and it's like I was supposed to be working on some of my stuff. And then it's
Yeah.
11:30, 12, and I'm like, I didn't get anything done because I got into this book. And
Yes.
so
I
yeah.
find myself, I'm really bad about that, especially because I've always, so with series, like when I start one and the first book hooks me, if they're all available, I will sit and like binge read and
Mhm.
neglect everything else I need to do. Like I'll do like regular stuff, like I'll take care of my son and like food stuff. I'm saying not really things around the house; those get neglected.
Oh yeah.
And
As long
it's
as
just
you
like
have clean clothes and the dishes, clean dishes for the eat on. That's
yes.
it's
But I
good.
get hooked in and I'm like, oh no, I can't, not until it's done, not until it's done. So, which I did that a couple weekends ago and they did the next book in the series that's out. And I was like, oh, I hate that. Like when you start a series, like,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Well,
but I
you
also
are not
understand it's hard.
alone.
Yeah, I know it's hard
I've
for
done
authors
it.
to get it out fast because like now that I'm author, I'm like, yeah, it's a lot goes into it. So,
It's hard. It's hard. And that's one thing, and I hate it for readers because they're like, I know it's taken so long, but it's when you're working and stuff at the same time. Usually I don't get another book out it's usually at least once a year and sometimes longer because when you're trying to do, and I'm just like, please be patient because I want to make sure that what's coming out is quality and it's enjoyable like reading experience. So I don't just want to slap it out there for you.
Yeah, because there's a lot like readers, I feel, and this is just from personal experience. Before I became an author, I didn't realize how much goes into like perfecting the manuscript or getting it as close to perfect, because you have to have somebody read over it. But first, you got to get all of the story out, which is time consuming because you have to balance everything else on top of it. And just like having editors, cover designers, marketing it, getting it all up, and just it's like, oh gosh. So
it is. And for me, like the rough draft, that for me is the fun part. Like I like the story once I start getting into it, it just flows. Like I can like once I'm in a scene, I literally can be in my den with my family and the TV is blaring and
yeah.
I can just write like the house could probably blow up and I wouldn't notice it. I mean, when I'm in my world, I'm in my world. But when I get to the revising and editing part, that process just, it takes, I hate it. And I know it's a necessary part, but I think the revising and editing actually takes me longer than sometimes writing out the book, because I just don't like it. And so I have to be like in a room, quiet. I become like this hibernating bear for the months that I do that. So that's the part that actually is really hard for me.
No, I get that
because and editing.
Yeah, you have to have like no distractions because I will like during the drafting process, the words are going in my head, but sometimes I'll like skip a small word like the or it or a. And if I'm not focusing during editing, my brain automatically puts it in and I go back and I'm just like, oh gosh, because I've got some of my stuff I've been utilizing Story Origin for like going over for like beta copy stuff. And I got on and checked while ago and someone was like, you left out a word here. It needs this. And I was like, oh, yep. You're right. And it had already gone through like me editing it once. So it's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to remember that and fix that later. So
because you're like no, I didn't, because my brain put it in there because I plugged it in 20 million times.
Yeah. So, and like with editing, you read the manuscript like so many times, or just like a chapter or a section. And it's like, you haven't, I mean, it's in your head already. Right. So it's like, oh man, it's crazy though. But and the other part of it, I find, like I do that too all the time. I'll just I'll put it in there because in my head, I put it in there. Like, but the other thing is too, I find like when I've read it so many times and been over it and stuff, that scene that I wrote that when I finished it and I was like blown away, I was like, that so amazing. Like I'm so psyched. Then when I read it like the 50th time, I'm like, okay, it's anything for me now. And it's like, okay, maybe it's not as good as I thought it was, but the problem is I've read it 50 times. And so like, that's the problem when you've done it that many times and read it, then you're like, I need to stop. I can't edit this anymore because I don't know like how to edit it. I don't know if I'm probably just messing it up now because I can't tell like how to help it anymore because it's not fresh. It's not cool for me anymore. And so that's when I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like I need to leave it alone because I'll actually I'm not going to be able to, I'll make it worse. I'll mess it up because it's not fresh anymore. It's lost. It's just kind of mingling in there. So
So
with the way your schedule is and everything, I like to ask every author I interview, do you have a method of self-care that you practice or that you do, or something that helps you keep like your sanity with everything going on? Especially since we've been in a never-ending pandemic.
I love the writing. It doesn't really, I'm good. Like, sometimes we'll just sit here and I'll watch something on Netflix, or we go to a movie. I mean, we really didn't change a lot. Like
Yeah,
a lot
I
of
forget
people.
because Texas and Oklahoma, I'm in Oklahoma, they kind of like have done the same thing. So
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people just kind of like stayed in, but we still went out. We went and got our groceries like normal. We went out to the movie when it was out. We went out to eat if we wanted to. I mean, we were and changed that much stuff. We were, I mean, I know that sounds, I don't know, sound bad, but we just, I, I guess the counselor and me just couldn't, um, because everybody was so focused on the physical part.
Mhm.
And as a counselor, like I like had in my mind the mental part, and I was
That's
like,
good.
I couldn't do that. I couldn't just stay
Like cooped
cooped
up.
up.
Yeah.
Like it's like my mental, I was like, I can't make myself do that. Like I have to, yeah.
No,
So
that's actually that's probably good because a lot of people don't consider the mental part, which is why I like to ask about the self-care thing. 'Cause there's so many creatives like that don't actually do it. And then a lot of people, what they do is they go to creative outlets for their self-care. So I'm like, okay, so that since that's what we do, like as our thing, like what do we do as self-care? So it's always been a fun question because it's always different. So
yeah, and I read a lot. Like I read other
mhm.
people's stuff, and so that's kind of my escape. Said it
Yes.
does. Sometimes it gets me in trouble because, like I said, I get into. I've actually had
Yeah.
authors that I've had to say, "Okay, I can't read the next book in your series yet because I have to actually get something done." Like,
Yes. It's hard. It is so hard. Oh, man. So, if you could tell a new author or an aspiring author a piece of advice for them as they begin their journey with this, what would you give them?
oh wow. I would tell them to just write the story that's in them. Like I'm 40 something now. Like I count it like one time a year. Like I because my son always asks me how old I am. So um he cares like that. He's like 10.
Gotta love kids.
I'm like, how do you not know how old you are, mommy? Because I don't care like that anymore. Like,
Yes, for real. You reach a certain age, and it's like, man, I'm
yeah,
just
because
there.
it's just a number. It's like how old you feel. I mean, and I mean, I never thought I would be writing. This was just something that I had a story and I wanted to tell it. And once you have a story to do it, like it's the writer in you, it's the passion for that story. And so that's what I would tell somebody that's a new writer. Don't worry about who's going to like it. Don't worry about like how many how many it's going to sell, and don't worry about any of that stuff. Just write it,
Mhm.
because that's exactly what I did. I just was like, I have this story and let me just write it. Let me just finally write it down because it's been swimming around in my head and it's been there. And I have an entire story. And that's what I did. I just started writing, and then I looked and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like a whole story, because I ended up actually writing the first and the second one together.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize that was going to happen. I wrote it and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is too big for like one book. So I had to find a place to split it. Um, so that's what I would say to somebody: just write it, write the story that's in you. Let that passion show through for your characters and for your story. And then the rest will come, hopefully. And if it doesn't, you've done what you love. You've wrote your story. And so let your passion for your story, let your passion for your characters, for your world, let that show through when you're writing it, because it will. If you follow your characters in your world, then it'll show through when you're writing, and other will fall for your characters too.
Nice. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being on the show today. Go ahead and tell our viewers where they can find you and your work.
Well, I am on lots of places. Not all of them equally as well, because that's the other challenge it's been as an author, like getting all the social media. So yes. It's not, that's a part that's just not, it takes a whole nother brain, the whole social media
Yeah,
stuff.
it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So but I do have a website, and it's elizabethlavender.net, and it has everything on there about all the books. It has any giveaways that are going on at that time. It has a link to sign up for my newsletter. And I'm about to try to put one out. I just do those monthly, one out this weekend, hopefully. And so I'm always doing fun stuff on that. So as far as in the newsletters, like ways to get a hold of the books, things in me, games we play about to get to know the characters. So things like that. So elizabethlavender.net on that. I'm on Twitter, twitter.com/eLavenderAuthor. I'm on Facebook, facebook.com/elizabethlavender.author. I'm on Instagram.com. If you go to my website, then it's got all the links to everything else. So that's the easiest way. I'm on Amazon, I'm on BookBub, I'm on Goodreads. So pretty much the major social medias.
Sweet.
But if you go to the website, it's got the links to everything else. So
awesome. Thank you again.
All right. Thank you for having me.